drawing strength from? What does our Maimed add about davening? Where are we drawing strength from? Basically, from Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? The idea of davening is to sacrifice your animal. Your animal. The way I explained it to you was, you sacrifice the animal, you quiet him, he becomes a collaborator, a partner, and then you can use your neshama, your quiescence, your depth, your higher levels can emerge, your deeper levels can emerge. What the Rebbe added is that Moshe has to help us. Kiti says Reish Bnei Yisrael, that was the Chiddush. That Moshe Rabbeinu gives a munah. In giving a munah, he empowers this process. So although Be'pashtis, Machtas HaShekel is about bringing a half a shekel for karbanas, and again, to go back to the question that I've sort of obsessed over, for that you don't need 6 psukim, that 1 pasuk is enough, or 2 psukim is enough. Why are there 6 psukim? Because the pnimius of Machtas HaShekel is karbanas, the pnimius of karbanas is tefillah, and the pnimius of tefillah is Moshe Rabbeinu. When a yid davens to the Eibush, then Moshe Rabbeinu helps him. Moshe Rabbeinu helps a yid daven. Moshe Rabbeinu helps a yid daven. Want some Lashon Hara?
Yes, sir.
Good answer. If you don't mind, if you could unplug my phone and give it to me so I should have the time, if you don't mind.
22.
20 to 9?
22, 8.
Oh, but give me, just unplug it, give it to me. It's probably charged enough.
24.
Okay. In other words, we started before 8:30 today. In case of Lashon Hara, okay, I want to give some contrast over here. Okay? I'll start with the Lashon Hara first. I had a Rosh Yeshiva, his name was Rabbi Yossi Friedman, Allah Shalom, passed away during COVID. Last month was his yahrzeit. And he would verbring once a year. Yitas Kislev, he verbring. He knew a lot of Chassidus, he had a lot of Chassidus. She supported him. He was a Chassidish Rosh Yeshiva. He was a real God. Somebody was a real God. He probably was a Baki B'Shas. He learned Torah day and night. Unfortunately, he didn't have any children. So, unfortunately, at plenty of time. He has a daughter, an adopted daughter. I think he just got married. But he didn't have any children. Biological children he didn't have. So he would fabring, and he had his stories. And David gave me a gift, I remember. A piece of Gemara to forget about, but a story I remember. So one of the stories, he had a whole series of stories, and he heard it from his mashpiyim, I don't know where and from whom. There was a tzaddik in Russia named Rabbi Yisrael Viledniker. Most of the Hasidic Rebbes were in Galicia, in Poland. But there were Hasidic Rebbes in Russia. And obviously the Hasidic Rebbes in Russia, the Lubavitcher Rebbes, were closer to because they were proximate to each other. Like the Slonim Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab. Certain tzaddikim had relationships. Anyway, Rabbi Yisrael Viledniker was a co-generationalist. He was a contemporary of the Tzemach Tzedek. And his Ruach HaKodesh was legendary. His Ruach HaKodesh was legendary. You would walk into his room and he'd read you like a ticker tape. Your past, your present, and your future. It was scary. He would read you like you read a computer. He'd tell you where you're coming from, what you're doing here, and where you're going. It was scary. Rabbi Yossi Friedman told us a different story, also very sharp for Maisa, that somebody came to the Tzemach Tzedek with spoilers. On the way to Lubavitch, he passed by Vilednik. And the Vilednik Rebbe told him where he lives and where he's coming and where he's going and why he's going. He read him like a ticker tape. So that he was being spoilers. A yid should be able to such Ruach HaKodesh. So the Tzemach Tzedek's response was, "V'ya kind altzva servei zokter." Like a little kid, everything he knows he says. So there was this competition. On the other hand, Tzemach Tzedek once said that you can't have Ruach HaKodesh without Torah. You have to be a choch. The prerequisite of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah is you have to be a big choch. So one of the Tzemach Tzedek's children said to him, so the Tzemach Tzedek got very excited. The Viledniker is a god, the Tzemach Tzedek said. Don't kid yourself. He acts like a Pashat Yid, like the Polish Tzadikim. They made believe they don't know anything. The Viledniker is a god. That was his response. The Viledniker is a god. Anyway, So the story was that there was a Velednik Chassid who was davening. And you all know the Chabad Chagas contention that in Chabad you have to do the work by yourself, and in Chagas the Rebbe gives you all the koiches. Chabad was very, very into Avodas Tefillah, and Chagas wasn't into Avodas, but whatever. So there was a Polish Chassid, a Velednik Chassid, in Tzemach Tzedek's times, not in the times of the Alter Rebbe, who was davening with Gevaldik Arichis. And the Chassid saw, and he was surprised in that generation, in other words, not in the generation of the Alter Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, a Polish Chassid davening like this, and he pointed it out to the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, and I quote, "Das davent nicht das davent der Velednike." He's not davening, his Rebbe is davening in his guf. Das davent nicht das davent he's not davening, his Rebbe is davening. He's just using his guf. Now, that is really mean. You know, you take a yid, you build him up, you make him David al-Akim, you say, no, that's not it, this is a puppeteer, you know, just yeah. And of course, the question that you would ask is, what about us? It's not the same in Chabad. I could be Yurais in Chabad, that it's the same thing, you know, that the Alter Rebbe passed away, and the Middle Rebbe became a Rebbe, and the Middle Rebbe had, this is all part of the Lashon Hara, by the way, so Chaparai, and enjoy the Lashon Hara. The Middle Rebbe had, there was a competition. The Middle Rebbe's competition was a Rabbi Strashela, Rabbi Arka Asfer, Rabbi Strashela. So some of the Chassidim, the great Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, went to Rabbi Strashela. And the name is given. I think Moshe Valenker went. The bottom line is the Middle Rebbe was makbid. Middle Rebbe was upset. And one of them, and just his name just slipped my mind, a Chassid Alter Rebbe from the great Chassidim of the Rebbe, lost his Machon. A Yid used to daven 6-7 hours at a time, daven on a minyan. The Middle Rebbe, took him in the Machon. Alter Rebbe made him into this big oived, and by the Middle Rebbe he couldn't daven. So he would run through the street and scream, Vu is Chayko. Vu is Chayko. I'm forgetting his name, but something like that. In other words, the Middle Rebbe was makbid, and he couldn't daven. So what's the pshat? If by the Middle Rebbe he couldn't daven, don't rub your hands on the table, yeah? Does that mean by the Alter Rebbe that his davening wasn't Chabad, wasn't his own? So what's the difference between the Velednik's Chassid, where the Tzemach Tzedek says, does daven nit does daven the Velednik, and the Alter Rebbe's Chassid, does daven the Alter Rebbe? What was his name? A famous Chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He went to the Middle Rebbe, to the Strasha. There were a few. The Benjamin Kletzker, the Moshe Valenker, a few of them went to the Strashela, the Middle Rebbe was makbid, and I'm not going to remember. The name was Chacha, maybe. I'm sorry, but I can't remember the name. It was a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe. So these are complicated stories, But let's go to the other side. Again, this is all part of Lashon Hara. In Hayom Yom it says, you've heard of Hayom Yom, yeah? You heard of Hayom Yom, yeah? Lishel bracha avor avedas Hashem hu bebechinas nirpim atam nirpim tzricha liyes tichba da avoid la'anosh. To come to a Rebbe and say, give me a bracha I should daven, is being lazy. You have to take the job on yourself. To come to a Rebbe and say, give me a bracha I should be able to daven, is nipah, it's soft. It's not Chabad. It has to be tichba da avoid la'anosh. You have to work. It's in Hayom Yom. So on one side, it says in Hayom Yom that for Yonim, you had a bracha for health, a bracha. But for avoida, you work like a dog. I'm sorry for using the word dog. Some dogs don't work so hard. So okay, whatever. You work hard. On the other hand, so the Sikh of the Frierdiker Rebbe, where he describes a chassid that he knew and respected greatly by the name of Rabbi Yossi Paltiel, and when he's describing his personality, he's describing he was a yid, a chassid, a moedenik gon, very strong mind. A oivid, a davener, he was the chassid who used to say every single night that tomorrow will be nicer than today, and it was. And he gave an opinion about what chassidus is, and part of that sentence is mitubel von brachas von abeseinu yenu. His avodas Hashem was spiced, was enhanced with brachas of a number of rabbis. He was a chassid from the Tzemach Tzedek, he was a chassid from the Rebbe Marash, he was a chassid from the Rebbe Rashab. So how is it? Is Is getting a bracha from a Rebbe in Yoni Avoida laziness, or is getting a Yoni a bracha and Avoida enhancement, right? Is getting a bracha from a Rebbe in Avoida does daven niter, does daven the Velednika? He's not davening the Velednika, he's davening, or is it Chabad and daven Dalei? It's a very hard question to answer. And by Pashtas, the answer is, it depends on Seder Advarim. You know, if you come for a bracha, then you're not davening, your Rebbe is davening. If you do the work, and the bracha enhances it, then it is your avodah. The dogma, I'm just assuming, the dogma for this is, what you have in Chassidus that's called avodas matana. Okay? You have in Chassidus a concept of a free lunch. You have in Chassidus the concept of a handout. You're getting them for nothing. Okay? What's a dogma of something you get for free? Vayashkem lovim ba'beikir. It says in Chassidus from Kabbalah that the moment you open your eyes the first time, koydem snooze. Koydem snooze. When you open up your eyes the first time, you're wide awake. You're wide awake. If you get out of bed, there's a lot of will. If you hit snooze, after 9 minutes, second time you wake up, you're fashlaf. The third time, even more fashlaf. Why? Because when you open up your eyes the very first time, Hashem gives you a jolt. If you get out of bed right away, you jump, you own it, you have energy. If you sleep it off, it's gone. It's called Vayashkem Lovim Babeka. Levin Tzim Samachvav. Levin Alien. The first time you open your eyes in the morning, there is a hisoidus that comes from Hashem. If you take it and you run with it, you'll have a good morning, you'll have a good start to your day. If you're fashlafim, the next time you wake up after 9 minutes of snooze, whatever your number of minutes of snooze is, a 9-minute snooze, a 12-minute snooze, an 8-minute snooze, a 15-minute snooze, it's not coming back. Why? Because it's for free. And what's for free, you can't control. So we have in Chassidus, in Avodah, a concept of a free lunch. You wake up in the morning, the Eibush comes through and gives you a kick in the pants. Now most of us sleep it off with snooze, but the Inyan is there. That's called for free. You get it for free. It's the morning. Chadoshim, Labkodim, Merabah, Monasach. It's a new day, you get a new jolt of Avodah. That is for sure Al Yishu B'divrei Havel. That's nothing. So when you learn the Maimorim on this topic of this Vayashkem Love Mabeka, what do they say? When the Eibush gives you something for free, you got to run with it. You got to run with it. Why do you got to run with it? Because if you don't run with it, you're going to lose it. You lose it, you're not going to get it back. But if you take it, something good will come from it. Hashem gives you a free one. Grab it and take it. I have a great story of a friend, someone that you know. It's a moidendike ma'ase. It's a gewaldike ma'ase. You know Shimon Rosenblum? I'm talking to Yisrael Ayaleb. You daven in Empire Shtibel.
I don't know his face.
He's the tzaddik of it. He is the holy man. He sits in the back, under the window. He's everything. That shul exists because Yankee Rosenblum's father. The mikveh, everything is them.
Yeah.
So he's a chef by profession. He's a Pashta Yid, but he's mamish a tzaddik. He's about Midas Toivis, and he's Pashta Chassid. He's special, deep, special, beautiful Jew. So he tells me a story. He's a chef. He's a cook. When the Rebbe wasn't well, Schoenberg Ansberg called him and said, I want you to cook for the Rebbe food because it needs very, very, very soft. It's easy to chew. I think after the stroke. It was after the stroke. But you have to come to the Rebbe's house and cook. He came to the house. In the basement there was a kitchen. He said it was very, very old but very, very clean. And he cooked. And the food was burnt to crisp. It burned. And he knew how to cook. And the fact that it burnt was in itself a surprise. So fine, he failed. Anyway, they called him back. You should come again, try again. So he came a second time. And this time the food came out. Now you have to know Shem Rosenblum. He's a very, very sweet, humble man. He's telling me the story. He says a day or two after I cooked the Rebbe's food, it was in the middle of the day, and I had a Yom Kippur moment. Those are his words. I had a Yom Kippur moment. He says, so I went with it. I did tshuva. I suddenly had this unbelievable lyhadus. It's an unbelievable awakening. I suddenly found myself in an emotional state. I mean, I don't know what Yom Kippur moment means to him, to cry, to laugh, but he had a real moment of awakening. He says, I didn't waste it. I took it. I did tshuva. He says, the next day, Shalom Gansberg calls me, and he says, the Rebbe ate your food. So I said to him, I'll tell you exactly what time it was. He tells him the precise moment when the Rebbe ate his food. So Shalom Gansberg asks him, how do you know? He says, because at the moment that I ate my food, I had Seder's Tshuva. Now, was that a story or was that a story? The Rebbe eats your food, then you do tshuva. It's pretty crazy. And I heard it firsthand. I heard it from the Baal HaMaaseh. So you got to run with it. So he said to me, I had a Yom Kippur moment. I didn't waste it. I didn't say Yom Kippur today, I got to go to the park. He did tshuva. He said this. You understand? That's when you get a freebie. Yeah. What happens if you're in the middle of avodah? You're in the middle of you're davening. It happens to me. You should know. It happens to me. I'll give a shiur, and something will come out of my mouth, and I'll swear to you, I did not say that. I don't know where it came from. It happens to me. Like, it happens to me. And I feel like the Abisha gives me words. The Rebbe gives me words. It happens. You know, everybody has, where do you see the Rebbe in your life? I see the Rebbe in my classes. Every once in a while, I'll give a class, and I prepare. I try to prepare classes. I just walk in and teach. And something will just come out of my mouth, and I'll tell you straight that was not for me. I don't know where it came from. It happens. So if you're working, you're in the middle of davening, and then you get a lyhadus. Now, is that free or not? Is that free or not? And the answer to the question is that it's called avodas matono. And it's the madrega of Aron HaKohen. Avodas matono means when you work, and your work is culminated, your work is graduated by something more, even though that comes from the Eibusha, that's considered yours. Waking up in the morning and getting a freebie, that's not yours. Hashem gave it to you. You got to run with it, or you lose it. But if you're in the middle of avodah, and in the middle of your avodah, you feel like the Eibusha is lifting you up. See, even though that Eibusha is not your avodah, even though that Eibusha is more than your avodah, it's yours. It's yours because you brought yourself to the space that the Eibusha gave you this matana. You see? So now, here we have a maimer that's describing tefillah. And it's saying that when a yid davens kitisas b'nei Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu helps him daven. So is the kitisas reish b'nei Yisrael nit davent does daven the veledniker? Is that him davening or that his Rebbe davening? Or is that Chabad? Or is that avodah b'koyach atzmai? And the answer is, it depends on how the order is. If the kitisas reish happens before you start to daven, it's a free lunch. But if the kitisas reish Yisrael happens in your davening, that's the ma'aseh of Gershon Ber. Mituvul for Aribi, Brachas, Abiseidnus, Yedu. Friedrich Rebbe describes him as a yid, a real serious ovid, whose avodas Hashem was enhanced by the fact that he had brachas for the Rabbeim of Yonim Pnimiyim. Why is that not nirpim atem nirpim? Why is that not lazy? And the answer is the brachas didn't come before the avodah; they came in the avodah. But one thing is for sure: this Maimer proposes that the Chumash is saying that when a yid davens, there's a tzaddik, a nosei ador who helps you daven. And it's called Ki Tisas Reish Bnei Yisrael. He's lifting up your head. He's helping your davening be more effective than it is by itself. And this is a truth. I feel every person who works for the Rebbe knows this. Where does a shliach see the Rebbe? In the shlichus. That's why to me, I feel like I see the Rebbe in my teaching, because it's my business. It's not for free. You're working hard. You have a job to do. You're a chassid that have a job to do. In your avodah, you see brachas havaya, the bracha of the Eibusha. Why? Because it's not for free. It's taka kitisas reish. Something happens and you say, these koiches are not mine. I told you yesterday that story. It's a crazy story. A guy has a dream. I told you something about Ichas yesterday. There's a 10-minute recording. I can send it to you if you want it. Have it on WhatsApp. A guy has a dream, and the Rebbe is talking about giving tzedakah and says to him, give $1,250 to a person by this and this name. So he says to the Rebbe, I'll do whatever you say. And then the Rebbe asks him in the dream, you know the guy? He says, I guess. Anyway, he wakes up, he has no idea who the guy is. He finds someone with a similar name in Argentina, and he wires him the money. 6 months later, 4 months later, he's sitting with a group of people, and somebody mentions a relative with this and this name. So he says, what? There's a shliach by this and this name? And a woman sitting at the table tells him the exact words that Rebbe used in the dream. You know him? He almost fainted. Anyway, he sent the guy another $1,250 with a message. And the message was, I don't know who you are, but you should know that the Rebbe is thinking about you. 4 months ago, the Rebbe told me to give you $1,250. And he brought up because the way he starts the clip is he says, my father was sent to the Frierdiker Rebbe of Shlichus in 1942 in Tafshin Beis, and he told the Frierdiker Rebbe that when I go away from here, I feel very alone. And the Frierdiker Rebbe told me you should never feel alone because any place that you go, where you're Isaac and Abat Satera, where you're busy spreading Teda, I go with you. So that's how he started his speech, and he made this point. So Kititzas Reish B'nei Yisrael could be an initial kick in the pants. That's not yours. But Kititzas Reish B'nei Yisrael could be in the Avodah. That is yours. But you know why you have 6 psukim Machzah Shekel? Because Machzah Shekel is for Kabbanis, Kabbanis is for Tefillah, and Tefillah needs Moshe Rabbeinu to give you a koyach, to lift you up. The davening should be bad, and the davening is going to be by itself. Questions or comments? Back to the sheet, please. Okay, question 231. How does that help explain this particular parsha? Because there's so many extra words in the parsha. There are so many extra words in the parsha. And you scratch your head and say, what are these words doing here in this parsha? We don't need them. It's enough just to say to give Machzah Shekel. And the fact that one time in the Midbar it happened this way is historic, and the Torah is not a history book. And the Torah says, because right now, when you and I do the Pnimius of Machzah Shekel, which is daven, Moshe Rabbeinu effect, that the davening should be more effective. So it's negated to us. So the 6 psukim, in other words, if you look at the Chitonius of, how am I framing the mind? If you look at the Chitonius of Pasha Machzah Shekel, it needs to be 1 or 2 psukim, not 6 psukim. But if you look at the Pnimius of Machzah Shekel, the Machzah Shekel is tefillah. Every single word is necessary because it's all part of tefillah. Beginning with the most important point of all, Moshe Rabbeinu. When a Yid has a Sederus, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Tzaddik, the Nasi, that helps him. I mean, you know the stories with the Rebbe that are really extraordinary. When I was a kid, I heard a story about a shliach who was traveling someplace, and he sent the Rebbe an itinerary, and the Rebbe told him to go to a certain town. The town didn't exist. The town didn't exist. He bought a map, didn't exist. He bought a bigger map in a certain state, someplace in America, one of those small states with a lot of outposts. But he went to the post office, to the central post office, and said, is there a place? And he found it. In the middle of nowhere. The whole place was a zip code in the middle of farms. It was one street. There was a general store, there was a church, lyhadus, and a post office. The guy shows up, there's no Jews. Mamish, before he's about to leave, this old lady comes to him, and she's crying, and she tells him she's lived here her whole life. She was born there. Nobody even knows she's Jewish. The Galach found out that she's a Jew, and he's trying to save her, that she should do tshuva before she should go to Elam Emes. And he was bothering her so much, so she said to him, you know what, leave me alone for 30 days. If I have no contact with any Jew, I'll be baptized. Today's the 30th day. And they never heard a Yid in Event sent a shliach, spent the whole day sitting there with nothing to do, and it saved her life. And when she passed away, they brought her to Kevi Yisrael, whatever. But the point is, that's such Kititzas Yisrael. When you have a seminary, Moshe Rabbeinu hears, and he helps lift you up, it's a part of tefillah. And that's why it's a part of Machzah Shekel. It's the gear. The Pnimius of Machzah Shekel is Kabbanis. The Pnimius of Kabbanis is Tefillah. Mizman HaGos Kabbanis is Tefillah. And when you daven, if you don't do nothing, nothing happens. But if you do something, there's a Kititzas B'nei Yisrael. The truth is, even if you do nothing, there's something happens. But it's a different kind. Then it's a freebie. Then it's Vayashkim Love Babeke. But when you do and you get, that's Kititzas B'nei Yisrael. Good. Next question. Moshe is described as lifting up which part of the Jew? The answer is the head. Of all the pieces, he's lifting up the head. Okay? How is it initially difficult to understand, and how is it better understood now? Initially, it was difficult to understand because he's talking about counting. And the Hebrew word for counting is not kitisa. The Hebrew word for counting is kitifka, kitimna, kitispe, right? And when you count people, not heads, right? Why do you use the expression head? And once you understand that kitisa means that Moshe Rabbeinu gives you a siyua in an ezed, in your avodah tefillah, it makes sense that it says kitisa, which means to lift up, rather than kitifka, which means to count. And it also somehow makes sense that Kitisas Roish, the highest part of the person is his mind, and Moshe Rabbeinu is raising that up. It works if you add the pnimis. Okay? Moshe does this by, there's no buying and selling. You can take out the U in the middle, infusing us with what? The answer is Amunah. Moshe infuses a Yid with Amunah. Moshe infuses a Jew with a sense of connection to Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu's trick is not to prove to you there's a God. Moshe Rabbeinu's trick is to get you to see God without a proof. That's his business. You want to learn something?
It's the Moshe Rabbeinu of every generation.
That's right. The Moshe Rabbeinu is the whole word. The Moshe Rabbeinu of every generation. So I was pointing out, this is the fourth Maimer that Rebbe said. The first one was Basi Elegani, the second one was the Hamshach of Basi Elegani, then was Veila Mishpat, and then is this. So the Rebbe's Nesias begins, huh? The fourth. What's the fifth? What's before it?
I told you before. I think.
Purim?
Yeah, Purim Katan.
There was no Maimer Purim Katan in 1951.
Purim?
Purim is the second order. This is the Shabbos of Achim of the Sheni. The fourth Maimer. So the Rebbe's Nesias began with Urei Amunah, with Vatat Tetzaveh. And I'm not going to say close, but the most recent Maimer we have for the Rebbe is the same theme. The Rebbe began his Nesias. The first Maimorim was about the infinite Amunah. Moshe Rabbeinu gives Amunah. And the Maimer which the Rebbe we learn every year, Gimel Tammuz, the Maimer of the Rebbe that we live with, is also the same Teich, Vatat Tetzaveh Amunah. So now let's go to the end of the Maimer, people. Okay, we actually have a few minutes, 12 minutes to be exact. Go to page Lamed Gimel. Go to page Lamed Gimel. You know what's going to happen over the next page and a half? The Rebbe is going to study various words from these psukim. Right? The big question that at least the way I'm framing it is, why does the Chumash on the one hand have so many extra words, and on the other hand, what it needs to say, it barely says? If you would juxtapose halacha against the Torah Shabbat, you have a lot of problems. Some halachas you learn from above. And then you have psukim and psukim and psukim that nobody needs. So how was Chumash written? And of course the answer is the Chumash is written because the Torah has a pnimius, a soul and a body. The body is the medrash halacha, and the soul is the pnimius Torah. So it may take one pasuk or two psukim to describe machzah shekel and halacha, but it takes 6 psukim to describe machzah shekel and pnimis if you understand that machzah shekel is for karbonis, and karbonis has to do with tefillah. And we have the first clue, kitisas reish. That Moshe Rabbeinu gives a yid a koyach to raise up even his head. But the Rebbe is going to study different parts of these psukim and show you the pnimis of each one of them. Shall we? We shall. V'alpize yuvan gam ken in machzah shekel. The whole Maimer that we learned before Pesach, really, about Moshe Rabbeinu giving Amunah. And if you remember, the Rebbe spoke 3 madreges in Amunah. There's Amunah of a goy, which is based on Seichel. There's Amunah of a Yid, which is called Ma'aminim. And there's a higher Amunah of Yid, which is called Ma'aminim, B'nei Ma'aminim. And again, if you remember, the Amunah of a goy is the madrega Mamalakalam. The Amunah of a Yid, because he's Ma'aminim, is madrega of Sevivkal. And the Amunah of a Yid is Ma'aminim. B'nei Ma'aminim is Amunah in Atzma Seis Baruch. And Amunah means a connection to God. Not a belief, a connection to God. It's not a proof, it's a connection. A goy can have a connection to Hashem. He starts with his mind, and then he makes that leap of faith that we spend so much time talking about. And L'havla Yid can have a connection to God. Mitzad Ma'aminim is in the Madreg of Sevel Kalman, which means Sofkal Sofal Lakus, which is connected to the world indirectly. And Mitzad Ma'aminim, B'nei Ma'aminim, you can have Amun and Atzma Sisach Mamish. Yisrael Ha'ileb Shlita.
Doesn't this speak about like time and some other things that level from minimum is like lower? And
it's lower because it's less earned.
Yeah.
But it's deeper because it's in your DNA.
But, and is that also what the Rabbi says in other Maimarim that we should bring back the opinions?
Yeah, of course. He doesn't say in other Maimarim, he says it in this Maimer.
Oh, I learned
That's what this Maimer is about. Shall we? Look inside. The entire thesis on Amunah that we did enhances Machzah Shekel. And again, what the Rebbe is doing, he's not telling us the halacha of Machzah Shekel. The halacha of Machzah Shekel we're going to learn a couple of days in Nechus Kolam and Rambam. which is based on Mishnayos and the Gemara Yerushalmi. You know that the only Masechta which is part of the Bavli from the Yerushalmi is Masechta Shkolim. There's no Yerushalmi. There's no Shkolim in Bavli. But for some reason, in the Shas Bavli, they put the Masechta Shkolim of Yerushalmi. I don't know why, but that's how it is. So Masechta Shkolim teaches Lachas of Machsa Shekel. When you study the Lachas of Machsa Shekel, Masechta Shkolim, so many of the words in the Pasha of Machsa Shekel, in the beginning of Pasha's Kisisa, become vestigial, unnecessary, redundant. What are they there for? Telling us about what happened the first time. They never know. Every detail is negeya on a optimistic level. And let's read it. Hine. Be'inyin machtis hashekel omru razal. Regarding machtis hashekel, it says in the Gemara, we look at footnote 52, we've been saying to the Yerushalmi. Matbeya shaleish had a loya kodesh baruch hu l'meish. That when the Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu that the kapara for Chet Egel is 50-cent coin, he showed him the likeness of a coin of fire. And he told him, this is what they should give. This is the kind of half shekel they should give. This means, so let me stop here for the moment. Let me tell you for a moment. Okay, I grew up. I'm older than you. I grew up in 770 in Beis Chayenu, and I was able to stand by hundreds of fabrengens. I'm a spoiled, rotten man who has wasted golden gifts that you wish you would give anything for. But what is, and the Rebbe spoke about this a number of times as a bochayat. I remember every year, not every year, but a few times spoke the same idea. What's the pshat, right? Where do you have in the Torah where Hashem points with his finger and says, do it like this? The first case is by Kiddush HaChedesh. He showed him the new moon. Hashem, wait, don't jump. He showed him the new moon. He said, like this. Why? Because Moshe was niskasha. Moshe didn't understand what it means, a new moon. Fine. When you get to the menorah, since the menorah has to have all these details, Geviyim and Kaftedim and Prachim, Moshe Rabbeinu was niskasha, and Hashem showed him Urei V'asei. Right? He showed him the menorah. Right? Why? Because it's hard to put together the menorah. It's complicated, yeah? But how hard is to give 50 cents for tzedakah?
Where did they have money? Like, when did they make a currency system, I just realized?
They may have had Egyptian currency.
They just used the Egyptian currency?
They took it with them. Or the other name. I don't know. I don't know what the teretz is.
Currency back then wasn't like today. It was old gold and silver.
Yeah, but it was coins.
Yeah, so I had someone else's face. I had Paris face. I had whoever. It's not a big deal. It was the same coin. It's not like one country was. It's both the same as gold.
Good answer. And we're going to go with it because I don't want to waste time on this. But the question is a question. The answer is an answer. They had 50-cent coins. So Hashem has to show him a silver 50-cent coin of gold, of fire. That he has to show him Kiddush HaChedesh, I understand. That he has to show him Moshe's Kasha, Ma'aseh Menera, I understand. But he has to show him 50 cents. Doesn't Moshe Rabbeinu 50 coins, so the Rebbe had to push the Zach. Moshe didn't understand. Moshe didn't have a problem with 50 cents. Moshe didn't understand how 50 cents is Mechaper on Ma'aseh Egel. That's what he didn't understand. The Jews make a golden calf. What's the solution? 50 cents. Mamish. 50 cents. You know the story with the Rebbe? It's like about the Kamais. There's a Yid who lived in Florida. He's now in Elma Emes. And his name was Orem Land. He was a Litvish Yid who came from Yisrael, lived in South America, he lived in New York. Agansai, he became very close to the Rebbe, this Mr. Orem Land, Rabbi Orem Land. Anyway, one year, Simchas Torah.
You know the story why he became close to that?
1 second. I don't have time for it now. 1 year, Simchas Torah, the Rebbe was selling Psukim of Ataresa, and he was there. And I don't know if he was drunk or not, but he said that he was giving tzedakah for Ataresa on the Rebbe's das. I think the Rebbe told him to give $18,000. This is the early 1960s. The guy did not have $18,000. It was a guzma. It was completely impossible. Anyway, he comes home to Florida, and part of the story, which is weird, is his wife never met the Rebbe. Never met the Rebbe. They were close to Lubavitch since the early 20s, 60s, and never came. But she had such a munah. She says, the Rebbe says $18,000. They had to do all kinds of shtick. They had to hack, I don't know what. They got the money sent it to the Rebbe. A little while after that, the guy became so rich. He had a crazy story that he had a piece of real estate, and it was worthless, and the Rebbe told him not to sell it. And then the hospital wanted to buy it, and the Rebbe told him not to sell it to them. So he leased it to them. He made money from Allah Zayt. He made so much money in a very, very short time. Anyway, it comes the next year. The year before, the Rebbe tells him $18,000, and look how well it worked out. So when it comes to Ataresa, he says, whatever the Rebbe wants, I'm going to give. And the Rebbe tells him, $118. $118. He says, Rebbe, last year I had no money. You asked me for all this guilt. Now I'm able to give $118. Said last year. Last year was different. Now, you give what you want. So this is Moshe Rabbeinu's kasha. 50 cents? Chet ha'el is nischapa with 50 cents. So the Eibishter showed him, Matbei Shalesh, it's 50 cents of fire. If it's 50 cents, you have a good kasha. But if it's Matbei Shalesh, if 50 cents of fire, that's the answer to the question. You'd give 50 cents, gives his neshama. And then it's Machafar Ma'aseh. So the Rebbe said this by Fabregan it enough times for me in my dumb head to remember this Nakuda. Very often in Pashas Shkolim, the Rebbe would say this Nakuda. When I say very often, I mean the few years that I was a Bachar and Yeshiva, K'min Mabei Shalesh. Yeah? So that's the Pshat. But here the Rebbe explains it different. Not Mabei Shalesh, you should give 50 cents of your own fire. Mabei Shalesh means when you give 50 cents, the Eibishter provides the fire. Look inside. Hashem shows Moshe Rabbeinu when he tells him, this is what they should give, which means, when we gave a half a shekel from below, as an awakening from below, the Matbei Shalesh, the fiery coin, isn't ours, it's Hashem's. In other words, it's Arusa D'Liel and arousal from above. When you ask the question, why do you have to have 6 psukim to teach us the halacha of Machzah Shekel? The answer is that Machzah Shekel has a pnimius. And part of the pnimius of Machzah Shekel is Zeyitnu. Don't give 50 cents, give these 50 cents. Was means Zeyitnu? A Yid stellt sich daven, and a Jew gets up to daven, and his davening is worth 50 cents. And the Eibishter provides the fire. And the Eibishter provides the fire. If you don't have, so you have the 50 cents. Machzah shekel for karbanis, machzah shekel for tefillah is 50 cents. But you don't have the kmed be'eshalesh. So why is there 6 psukim, not just machzah shekel? Because of the pnimius shekel. And the pnimius of machzah shekel is that when a yid davens, the Eibishter provides the fire. Zeyitnu. The Eibishter provides the fire. And the Eibishter provides the fire with the support, with the kvayachim, with the shlichus, with the emtzos of Moshe Rabbeinu. Noch a bissele. I'm stopping right here. I'm stopping on. Okay, I'm stopping on.
What the heck does it do? I did that one.